Hi, welcome to Out of the Cloud, where we take technology and telecommunications topics and we break them down for the everyday business owner. My name is Coley Lyon, and with me today I've got Ben. Ben, you have been in the call center realm for quite a while,
Sure.
and what I wanted to do today is actually talk about call centers themselves and how they've changed and how they can help people, whether it's from the receiving end of the customer or the business itself, and just kind of dive into that a little bit more to break that down.
Yeah, sure. So again, my name is Ben Smagacz. I've been in call centers on and off throughout my career, 25 years. Starting out, not to date myself, but in a call center for America Online. And at that time, you've got a massive building with 500-600 representatives rolling through 24 hours a day with networking equipment and a lot of resources necessary to maintain that. And now everything's quickly becoming virtualized. So your entire call centers, all of your agents, all of your reps can be remote. And you can still get all the same analytics and data and information that you needed just without having the brick and mortar site.
Talk a little bit more about you. Other than being in a call center way back when, what has changed for you? What have you seen from a personal stance?
As I said, a good portion of my career was in call centers. However, I did segue over into telecommunications. Part of that was understanding structured cabling. I did structured cabling for 3 or 4 years, large projects, cabled 500,000 square foot buildings. From there, I moved up to a service team to manage phone systems, installations of PBXs, installations of digital and IP types of phone systems. Moved from there to porting and provisioning, which is the mysterious world of moving numbers from point A to point B. Did some project management, and then somehow made my way back to call centers again with TelWare by building our first in-house call center and our frontline support team.
Nice, okay. Given those, I feel like you have a really good grasp of how the overarching call center concept helps everyone, not just the people who directly need it and the people who are directly working in it. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'd like to roll it back a little bit because you briefly touched on it before and talk about things that have changed in the industry. So 25 years ago when you started out and you were in a call center environment, what was it like? I personally haven't experienced something like that, so I'm curious. I'd love to know how things have kind of changed. And then getting into a more recent concept, of course, how the pandemic has changed everything and the remote work concept.
Yeah, absolutely. So a call center agent was a unique breed. And I think that if any call center agent's watching this, they can absolutely understand. You are trapped in a cubicle farm. You decorate your cube, you've got just this, it's an interesting culture to be able to sit there and take 300-400 calls a day. With that aside, with everybody moving remote, so let's say for example COVID, when COVID hit, we had to quickly move most individuals to an at-home environment. These essential businesses or businesses that were no longer essential couldn't operate without having the manpower. And the only way that we could do that was move these employees to a remote environment that is in their home, using their internet, their connectivity, their hardware to receive calls from inbound customers. It was a quick and easy and simple transition. Let's say 3 years ago, it was an absolute nightmare to take an IP phone and make it remote. In today's environment, you can essentially hand somebody a phone, they can take it home, plug it in, and they're good to go. And they don't even need the physical hardware. They can do everything from their desktop on their PC as well.
Would you say that the individual's work experience and the environment that they see every day, they feel every day, especially if they're working from home, is significantly different from when they were in cubicle farms and when everything was just, in office, huge call center environment?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, you can go to your fridge whenever you want and get a snack, right? Yes, the culture is absolutely different. It really depends on what your preferences are. I am kind of a team type of a person, so I like to be in the office or around my other colleagues so we can collaborate. However, there are a lot of individuals and different generations at this point now that thrive being at home in their own office, to be able to take calls and to do day-to-day business without having to do the commute every day, without having to deal with currently gas prices are absolutely awesome, right? So not having to deal with that and being in your own home makes things significantly different.
What challenges from being a call center manager have you found, especially with the work from home environment, and what ways have you found to improve people's day-to-day? Because you do have multiple different types of people. You've got your introverts, your extroverts, your people who need physical interaction like you do versus people who like to stay at home.
Number one thing as a call center manager or call center supervisor is understanding and ensuring that there is efficiency among your agents. Your agents are there to be on the phone, logged in, and taking inbound calls from your customers. If they're not, the experience for your customer could be extended. They're waiting longer to talk to somebody, they go through some type of an overflow, an agent doesn't answer the call, and they end up in, let's say, a general voicemail box waiting for a call back. So from a call center supervisor and having at-home representatives, one of the great tools is the reporting that comes along with the call center environment. So you're able to look at schedule adherence. You're able to see all of the call volume coming into your call center real time. You can see wait times. You can see, what agents are available, what agents aren't available, your talk times, how long that your agents are interacting with your customers. And with a remote or in-office environment, you can also gauge to see if those numbers are reflected differently. Some offices are hybrid. We come in and work 2 days a week at the office, and we work 3 days a week at home. And from a manager perspective, you want to make sure that those statistics are still sound. So it makes it way easy having everything in a remote cloud-type environment with a call center to capture that data.
Okay. I like that. I feel like that's very on the individual level from a manager standpoint, being able to see who's doing what, when, how, things like that. From an overarching concept, what other kind of metrics can you pull that helps a business who is a call center understand how they're performing, understand where they're standing, what they need, things like that to help build, grow, and change?
Yeah, that's a great question. So a couple of things. One is you're able to look at snapshots or call volume over large ranges. So let's say 7 days, 14 days, 1 month. You're able to see the peaks and valleys of your call volume. You're able to ensure that you have the manpower available to take those phone calls, not only to ensure that your customers' needs are getting met, but your business is running lean and efficiently, and you don't have additional agents and paying somebody to not take the phone calls. So another benefit to having a call center and data or analytics that you can draw off of it are some companies like to do marketing campaigns. So let's say they have radio ads, or they're running paper ads or e-ads, and they want to see where the majority of the traffic's coming from. So you will assign a telephone number, it comes into a queue, and you're able to see what markets are most beneficial, where you're spending your marketing money the best. So it's a quick way to see those types of graphs. And another great benefit to it is you don't need to be a massive call center and have 25, 30, 40 people. You can even have 3 or 4 people within your call center. Really depends on what your needs. Some small businesses do big things, and you just need to have the analytics to back that up.
Let's talk about the human aspect of a call center, and more so from working inside of a call center. In a second, I'd like to talk about how the customer experience is. But we're talking about analytics and having people logged in and out and making sure that we can track everybody in terms of their ability and their movement and scoring them based off of their talent, everything like that. But what about kind of the personal step of it? Meaning working from home can be hard for people, or even just working in a call center in general can be difficult for people. And I imagine there could be high turnover if it's not a good, cohesive environment. How do you guys tackle that? Have you found any tips and tricks throughout your lifetime that helps keep that communication there, keep the personal aspect to where you keep your employees for longer?
That is a great question, and a lot of that, I will have to say, has to do with the machine that runs that particular organization.
Okay.
As I mentioned earlier, I worked for America Online. That was a high volume call center. You had call times that you had to adhere to. So, overall for a month, they wanted my average call time to be 7 minutes and 30 seconds. Anything over would have been a performance issue. I needed to be on the phone for 8 hours a day. I'd have 2 15-minute lunches and a 30-minute break, and they held you to it. If you were 5 minutes before or 5 minutes after, you could potentially get in some type of a performance issue. So there are some companies like that have very, very, very high call volumes. And that's why I said, call center individuals can be a unique breed to be able to do some of that. However, depending on the organization or the company you have, for example, ours is TelWare, our focus is on the customer first. So we don't really focus on call times. We don't focus on necessarily schedule adherence, just because we want to make sure that our agents are doing their diligence for our customers. We want a one-call solution. We don't want our customers to have to call back 3 or 4 times because our agents were rushed off the phones to try and deliver a solution even though that it's not the right one. So it really depends on the characteristics of the company itself. We have brought on multiple other people who have come from call center environments or large kind of tech firms that involve high call volume or high call traffic, and they quickly fall in love with our organization, just because we do provide that leeway to allow somebody to be not so much as a machine, but more of a human. And that's really important. And then we're also finding if working remote or working from your own home is something that you really kind of enjoy, it adds a whole different layer of comfort, and it's something to make the job a little bit more enjoyable for you.
Okay. You talk a lot about the customer and the customer experience within the company, and considering it's tech support and very call center oriented for certain roles within the company, how have call centers benefited for customers? Maybe not ours specifically, but maybe just in general. What are some ways that people can kind of feel the difference today maybe versus what it used to be? Whether it's simple things like getting a real person versus a robot in the beginning or anything like that.
Yeah, so call centers are far more intuitive than they used to be. Before, you didn't have things like IVR. IVR is an interactive voice response, where you can essentially talk to the lady on the phone, right? So that does, in some regards, speed things up. Really depends if that lady will let you pass with a 0 or not, right? We've all done that to try and get through to a different queue. But the fundamentals of the call center allow you to speed your customer along to a human being, right? In most organizations, you want to talk to a human, right? If you're calling, you want to talk to a person. You don't want to talk to a bot. You don't want to press a button. You don't want to have to do any of that. So you can use things such as an API. Without getting too technical, an API allows you to push or pull information from another destination. For example, a CRM. A customer calls. When the customer calls, that their telephone number or their caller ID will hit an API. The API will then reach out to your CRM. Your CRM is your customer tool that allows you to communicate with the customers, inventory, keep customer data, things along those lines. From that telephone number and through the API, it can pull data such as, is this a preferred customer? Is this a VIP customer? Is this customer, let's say HVAC, have a legacy air conditioner? When that information is pulled back, it then can essentially route that call to a specific queue, a specific person, or a specific group of individuals, speeding up the communication. So when I have a customer who's a longtime customer, they don't need to call my main number, hit my auto attendant, select option 5, wait for whatever. Now, when they call the number, it's immediately going to route their call based off their caller ID. So it just speeds up communication, gets them to where they need to be faster, and overall the experience is just a little bit more enjoyable.
Okay. So because of all the different avenues that an individual employee in a call center can use today, whether it's the physical phones in or outside of the office, any kind of web-based computer, headphone setup, whether it's a mobile device, whether it's a desktop downloadable, anything like that, what's the scalability look like? I'm sure back in the day it was probably a little bit more difficult to make change, make growth versus now, but can you touch on that for me?
That is a great question. Again, to segue to 15, 20 years ago, right? They used to have things called like an Aspect phone system. Aspect was massive in large-scale call centers where you're talking 500 or 600 agents. And all of those phones tied back to a physical card that had to be slid inside of a box for the bank of phones to work. So essentially you needed physical hardware in order to add additional phones to have additional agents take those phone calls.
I didn't even think about the fact that call centers needed so much physical technology back then. Just probably closets and closets. I'm picturing like what I always see is like the old like 1980s computers where it's a whole room for one computer. That kind of concept.
I mean, it kind of was because I mean, you had to, before, let's say IP phones, you had digital phones in a call center, you had to have a physical box in order to connect all of that together to talk to its mothership or, you know, the brains of the phone system. It then progressed to IP phones, but again, you still needed this physical infrastructure to plug the phones into. You had to have the data, the connectivity, the data cabling, all of those things that would make the phones available to reps to take calls. Now everything can be virtualized. So a remote employee doesn't need any physical data cabling. They pull up a web phone on their desktop, on their computer, plug in a USB headset or put in your ear pods, and you're taking phone calls for your customers. As to scalability, since you don't have that resistance or the friction of needing to have the physical network environment or the expanded cabinets or anything like that, it's essentially just a license. You want a new agent? Boom, there you go. You've got a license, the agent's ready to go, they receive a welcome email. That welcome email, they click a couple of links, they're ready to go in just a matter of minutes and ready to take calls for your customers.
Okay, yeah, that seems like it would be really, really easy then. I feel like call centers are more than just phone calls at this point. Can you touch on the different avenues that an individual from a call center could utilize as their benefits? I guess what I'm asking is, I'm sure there's a standard call center concept, and then there's some form of like blended or omni call center that you could use. What does that encompass today versus what was or wasn't possible way back when?
Yeah, so way back when. So actually it brings up a good point of, let's say, generations and how those generations like to communicate. Every generation's a little bit different. Some are like, pick up the phone and call me, and some are like, just send me a text, right? We all want to communicate in the avenue or channel that we're most accustomed to, which leads leads the industry to understand that the contact center, so a contact center is your call center essentially, needs to be an omni-channel. So omni-channel means SMS, which is texting, so I can text you back and forth. Email, I want to just communicate with you over email, I can do that. Telephone calls, what some people now consider the old-fashioned way, and then web chat. And there are tools within call centers now that even tie in things like social media, so WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook, things along those lines. Your contact center or your call center or your agents could communicate with your customers across those channels seamlessly. And it all integrates very quickly, and again, they can be remote. They don't even need to be in your building itself.
And there are tools out there that you can do it all under one roof. It's not have a tab open here, have a tab open here, have a tab open there for all the different avenues. It's one cohesive environment. It
is. And again, it really depends on what you're looking for. There are a lot of options. There's a lot of a la carte options out there. There are a lot of different platforms that do many different things. I'm privy to ours, of course. But there are a lot of different platforms that do different types of communication. I'm sure, let's say real estate, for example. You drive by a sign, the house is for sale, it says text this number. You may not realize, but a lot of times when you text and ask for that information, they're capturing your information, it's going to a contact center, and within 15 minutes you're getting a phone call. So a lot of those environments, a lot of those call centers aren't what you would appear as a bunch of people sitting in cubes taking phone calls. They're doing a lot of different aspects to communicate with your customer base than just being a call center agent.
So we've touched on a lot of different things, and I want to dive a little bit more into the bells and whistles, for lack of a better term, that different call centers can have, that people can opt into, from the user versus manager versus even the end customer experience, and some things that you're personally a big fan of that you want to touch on, that you maybe use in-house or that you've seen other people use in their environments.
Sure. So again, we were talking earlier about the older call centers and how you needed all this crazy infrastructure for everything to work. Now a call center agent can literally install a web phone on their desktop. That's it. They don't need to log into anything else. The web phone has all their tools to log in and out of the call centers, to log in and out of their queues specifically, and they can look at all of their stats right there. Their call times, they can look at their their average talk time, hold time, and everything is quickly there for them at a glance. You know, depending on the team, those stats are the world. If you're a sales environment or something like that, you want to see, hey, I'm taking these calls, I'm making these turnovers, I'm making this money for the company, and people are really driven off of that. But it's nice to have that tool that they can just have right there on their desktop. Everything's at a glance. For the customer side of things, you know, a lot of the tools that come along with web chat and SMS and the convenience of it makes it a lot more conducive for customer success as well. For the bells and whistles on the supervisor side, those are the things that obviously get me a little bit more excited to be able to see the efficiency of the machine of the call center. Some of the great tools that come along with that are scheduled reports. Scheduled reports are huge. I can create different types of custom reports. For example, if I touch on enhanced reporting, reporting allows me not to just report on my hunt groups and my groups of agents, but I can create custom groups of particular agents across multiple departments. So I can look at that information and I can have it emailed to me daily, monthly, weekly. I can look at it hourly. I can look at it, I can look at averages of calls between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. And it's all automated. So once I've gone in, I've set it, I've configured it how I want it to be, I get those reports automatically. And I can loop in whoever else I want. So everything's right there at a glance, easily available. You also have interfaces that allow you to see your agent availability. So you can see when they're logged in, when they're not logged in, why they're not logged in. You can look at Cradle to Grave. Cradle to Grave is a great tool. What that does is you can watch the flight of a call come into your phone system. From the moment it comes in, it rings, what queues it goes through, how long they're on hold, what agent they speak with, and the termination of that phone call. So from my perspective, being able to see that and understand that, and being able to go back and pull that data. Let's say something happens in 3 months and somebody calls in and says, well, I spoke with this person and this happened. I take their caller ID, I punch it into my tool, I pull the call, I'm able to get the recording, I'm able to see the flight path of the call, and I have everything quickly there. I don't have to dig for 2 hours or talk to 5 other departments to try and get that information.
So that's a lot of really good information. What makes me kind of wonder is businesses have grown or changed or whatever it is, especially in the past few years from the pandemic and everything. And maybe there are some people out there who are questioning whether they need a tool like this, whether they're ready to take that growth step. And do you have any advice for them on how do you know if you need a call center? What differentiates between a regular company versus starting to need that more in-depth communication with their customers and in-house?
Yeah, sure. Again, it really depends on your business need, because once you step up to a call center type platform, of course, you're going to be paying a little bit more for your solution, right? And a lot of times money is the common denominator in what decisions that we make. Most phone systems nowadays, if you don't have call center plugins or all the fancy tools and bells and whistles that go along with them, you can look at call volume, right? How many calls did I receive? And you can look at that over a couple of days. You can look at call logs, when those calls came in, and some of them allow you to even pull call recordings, but that's pretty much where it stops. Depending on your environment, again, we touched on marketing earlier. Do you run a lot of marketing campaigns? There's a lot of money that you're already throwing at that, right? So why not get the information that's going to allow you to see what market is generating the most revenue, right? That just seems like a good way to save money. Yes, you're going to spend a little bit more money moving to the call center, but overall, you know that your marketing is going to be a little bit more pinpointed. Also, your call volume is a really, really important factor. If you have a large quantity of calls coming into your team, and you need to make sure that your employees are using their time efficiently and your customers are being serviced efficiently and quickly as possible, and you're growing and scaling very quickly, having that information to you is incredibly valuable to make sure that you're making the right decisions, not only for your customers, but for the manpower of the organization.
Okay, that makes sense. So just kind of to sum it all up, you know, I feel like we touched on a lot of things today in terms of general concepts, benefits, features, and functions. And depending on where customers are today, where businesses are, maybe the tools that they need moving forward, I feel like this gives people a good stance as to here's what call centers offer today.
Sure.
Maybe I'm not where I need to be. Maybe I'm in something a little more what people would maybe call old school in comparison to some of the features and functions that you touched on. But it gives people kind of a good place to start, a good place to begin that conversation, and maybe reach out to you if they have any extra questions, anything like that.
Call me anytime.
Well, Ben, thank you so much for your time today. I definitely feel more educated on everything that you've touched on, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and help educate all of us on what's available in the world of call centers.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. This is Out of the Cloud. My name is Coley Lyon, and we will see you next time.